Alright, let's dive into something that's been buzzing in the startup scene, particularly in the Philippines. Here's the thing, the biggest challenge facing PH startups today. But before we get into that, let me just say, this isn't just about the Philippines, it's a microcosm of what's happening globally, and that's what makes this so fascinating. So, what's the big challenge? Funding. Yeah, I know, it sounds like a broken record, but hear me out. What makes this really interesting is that it's not just about the lack of money, it's about the kind of money and where it's coming from. Personally, I think the funding landscape in the Philippines is at this weird crossroads. On one hand, you've got this incredible entrepreneurial energy, with young founders building innovative solutions. On the other hand, the investment ecosystem feels like it's still catching up. And that's where things get tricky. From my perspective, one of the biggest misconceptions is that funding is just about throwing money at a problem. What many people don't realize is that it's also about mentorship, networks, and strategic partnerships. In the Philippines, there's this growing gap between the availability of seed funding and the lack of follow-on capital. Startups can get off the ground, but scaling? That's a whole different ballgame. If you take a step back and think about it, this isn't just a local issue, it's a reflection of how emerging markets often struggle to bridge the gap between early-stage and growth-stage funding. What this really suggests is that the ecosystem needs to evolve, and fast. Now, let's talk about why this matters. Startups aren't just about creating the next big app or tech company, they're about driving economic growth, creating jobs, and solving real-world problems. In a country like the Philippines, where there's so much untapped potential, these challenges feel even more urgent. One thing that immediately stands out is the role of government and policy. Personally, I think there's a huge opportunity here for policymakers to step in and create a more supportive environment, tax incentives, easier regulations, maybe even a dedicated fund for tech startups. But here's the kicker, it's not just about the government. The private sector, especially established corporations, needs to play a bigger role too. What this really boils down to is collaboration, something the startup ecosystem thrives on, but often struggles to achieve at scale. A detail I find fascinating is how cultural factors play into this. In the Philippines, there's this strong sense of community and family, which is amazing, but it can also make risk-taking a bit more complicated. Many founders I've spoken to talk about the pressure to play it safe or stick to traditional careers. This raises a deeper question: how do we encourage more people to take the leap into entrepreneurship when the safety net feels so thin? In my opinion, it's about changing the narrative, celebrating failure as a learning experience, showcasing success stories, and making entrepreneurship feel more accessible. If you think about it, this challenge isn't just about funding or policy, it's about mindset. The Philippines has this incredible talent pool, a growing middle class, and a young population that's tech-savvy. The pieces are all there, but they need to come together in the right way. What this really suggests is that the biggest challenge facing PH startups today isn't just external, it's internal. It's about building an ecosystem that's resilient, inclusive, and forward-thinking. And that, my friends, is what makes this story so compelling. So, here's my closing thought. The challenges facing PH startups are real, but they're not insurmountable. Personally, I'm optimistic. I think we're on the cusp of something big, a wave of innovation that could put the Philippines on the global startup map. But it's going to take effort, collaboration, and a bit of courage. What do you think? Are we underestimating the potential here, or is there something I'm missing? Let me know in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going.